This week on the Creation Today show,
where are the stars? There's missing stars in the backgrounds. The shadows are not parallel. If there's only one light source, why are the shadows at an angle? How did the astronauts survive going through all that intense radiation? And then the other one, of course, is they would say, well, they had to fake it because they were in the middle of the Cold War, and in order to fulfill the timeline that President Kennedy did, they decided to fake it because they were running out of time.
Welcome to the Creation Today show, where we bring together interviews with experts and solid Bible teaching. Your host, Eric Hovind, affirms the ultimate authority of God's Word, the truth of creation, and why it matters to you.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're tackling an age-old question that just won't die. Did we really land on the moon? I mean, because apparently it's 2024 and we have phones that are smarter than NASA's entire Apollo mission, but we haven't gone back to the moon? Now, some people, they think Stanley Kubrick, the guy who made 2001: A Space Odyssey, faked the entire moon landing on a soundstage. But is it possible that he could have been such a perfectionist he insisted on an on-location shoot instead? Now, I get it. Conspiracy theories are a whole lot of fun. I mean, honestly, who doesn't love a good, what if story? Like, what if Elvis is still alive? And what if the earth is flat? And what if we really did evolve from ape-like ancestors that came from self-replicating cells on the shores of the ocean 3 billion years ago? What if? But when it comes to the moon landing, I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest achievements in human history. And some people think that the real feat was actually making it look convincing on TV in the 1960s. So today we're going to come to a final conclusion on the moon landing conspiracy. Was it real, or was it a really good fake? Strap in, folks, because today is going to be one small step for logic and one giant leap in common sense. Now, if you're new to the Creation Today show, we are not always this weird, but when we are, people love it, or they hate it because they disagree, like Mike on social media, who said, "We did not go to the moon." Okay, Mike, either way, our main mission, get it, mission? Our main mission is to disciple the world one person at a time. We want to turn the stumbling blocks that keep people from seeing Jesus as the creator and redeemer of mankind into stepping stones on their journey to know the truth about God. Now, I got big news for you guys today. Big news for this show, the Creation Today show. Today, this show marks our 400th show. And I just want to say, guys, to the team, congratulations. All of you that work behind the scenes tirelessly to make all this happen. To my former co-host, Paul Taylor, Marianne Sheckelman, Ben Shetler. Man, guys, thank you for making these amazing. To the guests that I've had on the shows over the years who have brought incredible knowledge, incredible information to our people watching, to our viewers. Thank you, guys. It truly has been an incredible journey. And the fact that these shows now have been seen literally by millions of people around the world, honestly, we just feel blessed to serve so many people the truth in such a simple to understand way. The social media viewers out there, guys, thank you guys for joining us. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons. We love it. And if you want to get the full thing, come on over to creationtoday.org, where we get to explore creation today. Hey guys, in order to have an intelligent conversation on this whole moon landing business, I've invited both an astronomer and a rocket scientist to join me to help us decipher all the information that's out there. Guys, would you please help me welcome Master Rocket Rob Webb and Dr. Danny Faulkner, two friends, both from Answers in Genesis, and we'll find out if they're really Freemasons or not, because to have a good moon landing episode, you got to invite the Freemasons. Guys, are either one of you guys 33rd degree Masons? Is that because we kind of need one of those to actually have a good conversation about this, or are you guys part of the conspiracy cover-up here?
Danny's got something in his office you can show. He's a little
letter opener.
Yeah.
Danny, you got a Masonic symbol on you there?
Oh, I got a
Well, while he's finding that, Rob,
There we
you got
go.
a NASA shirt
I got
on.
a mason jar. Does that
Okay.
There you
count?
go. Mason jar.
And I do have a set of dividers that go in there as well.
Oh, oh,
Usually
oh,
call that a compass, though. But
oh, that's funny.
I do have a letter opener here that belonged to one of my grandfathers, and it's from the 150th anniversary of the Grand Lodge of Kentucky. And a lot of people out there think I'm a Mason. They said, "See, he proves it. He's got that letter opener." I said, "Yeah, I was there when they had the 150th anniversary. See, he's admitting it." Well, folks, that 150th anniversary was in 1950. Just how old do you think I am? I don't know. I think my grandmother may have given this to me. I don't know. But anyway, it's just a memento of my grandfather, my grandmother. But I'm not a Freemason, never have been a Freemason. I don't think I could join if I wanted to. So, no, I'm not a Freemason.
Now, what about you, Rob? Rocket Rob, you were part of NASA, so you're definitely in on this whole conspiracy thing, right? I mean, are you going to even tell us the truth today, what we really want to know?
Yeah, I'm not a Freemason, but I was part of the NASA rocket science industry for many years, and so that's a four-letter word I've got right here. Made sure I wore my spectacles for this episode, and yeah, I worked on a lot of fun deep space program missions. As part of the Parker Solar Probe, the first mission to touch the sun. I sent spacecraft to Mars, Jupiter, asteroids, but I've never sent anything to the moon. So there's that.
So we're going to take what you say with a grain of salt, okay, buddy? We're
That's
just going to
right.
kind of make sure what you're telling us is the truth. Okay, how long have you guys been hearing about this whole moon landing conspiracy? When is this kind of a new phenomenon, or ever since the 60s when we went, according, it landed in 69, has it been something that's been kind of questioned all along, or is it kind of a new development here years later?
I
He's
I
been
think
around a lot longer than I have. He can speak to the.
I think
Danny's like, I know, I was there when it was invented.
I think there have always been people who doubted it. When I was in high school and one of the Apollo missions was going on, probably around 1970 or 71, I had a great uncle. He was at that time probably at least 80 years old. And he was on television and he didn't believe it. He said, they're up on some mountaintop or hilltop filming this. He never gave us any reasons why. So there have been people always kind of doubted it, but they were in small minority. There was in 2001 or 2002, there was a documentary that played on the Fox network, not the Fox News network, but the other network, the one with the Simpsons and other programs on it. And it was an hour-long documentary. I watched that at the time, and I thought, well, that's interesting. Then there was a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, made shortly thereafter. And it really took off, though, about 10 years ago. I think I first kind of got reintroduced by the Flat Earth movement, which we're not talking about today. But I generally don't talk about it with them because even if we didn't go to the moon, it doesn't mean the Earth isn't spherical. So I think most Apollo moon landing deniers are globe earthers, and so we just need to set that aside for the time being. But yeah, it's been growing a lot over the past 10 years, and I blame that on social media, YouTube videos, things like that. People need to unplug and go out and talk to people and get a life rather than just sitting around and watching videos all the time. Not that there's anything wrong with watching some videos. It's just that's all you're getting all your information from. It's not good.
Just for me, I mean, at the Creation Museum at the Ark Encounter, I give lots of talks, and I won't even be talking about space. I'll be giving a talk on creation and evolution. But because they know I used to work for NASA, immediately their very first question, rather than asking me about the presentation itself, they'll ask me, "So, did we really go to the moon?" And they'll kind of probe me there. And to be fair, like Danny was saying, not all of them will be a flat earther. Many of them do believe that the Earth is a globe. They do believe that space is real, satellites are real, that we've even been to the International Space Station. They just doubt that the Apollo missions actually happened. And so I actually got so tired of answering questions on a month-to-month basis. What I did is I made myself a little business card, Answers in Genesis business card. So I simply just hand this out to people, little QR code, and it takes you to one of the articles I wrote on our website, answersingenesis.org. Just type in there moon landing, you'll be able to read it. So that way, it just save me some time. People can go and find the answers for themselves.
And that's a pretty long article, right? I mean, you took time really going through the different arguments on that article.
6,000, 7,000 words, not counting footnotes. So yeah, I put a lot of detail. I probably could have put even more, but I wanted to keep it at least not, novel length or book length there. So.
For me, it was probably a decade ago that this was coming out and the flat earth was becoming a big movement. And I started wondering, okay, let me look at these arguments. And you really do. I mean, there are some arguments that sound incredibly convincing. And I want to make sure we cover anything that's relevant today. But I happened to be somewhere where Colonel Jeff Williams was, and he's a guy who's spent, ended up spending a lot of time on the space station. And I asked him, I was like, I'm in California with some guys at ICR out there at the time. And I'm like, well, this is my chance. Like, I feel like an idiot, but this guy's an astronaut. He's been there. He's, supposedly been to space. I'm like, I want to find out. Like, am I allowed to ask, like, did we really go to the moon? And he's like, yes, we went to the moon. So I was like, okay, all right, So what are the arguments people are using? I mean, I've heard of, the flag waving and the dust argument. There's no crater and there's no stars in the photographs. So can we start picking some of these arguments that people are using to say we didn't go to the moon or that it was faked, and talk about why we would claim that? Why did we go to the moon in the first place? And then how do we fix these problems that people have when they're looking at that?
I remember the flag wave argument that came from that movie over 20 years ago. I saw on Fox Network, and it was they showed the video of the astronauts there, and they're standing there with the flagpole, and they're turning the flagpole, and sure enough, the flag is waving like there's a breeze blowing on it. So see, that's impossible. There's the vacuum of space. There's no atmosphere on the moon. And I had to laugh because it was pretty obvious what was going on. People may not realize it today, but I remember this being discussed because I was a teenager at the time during the Apollo program. The flags they put up had a little wire that ran along the perimeter of the flag, because if you just simply had a regular flag and you put it up there with no wind on the moon, it's just going to hang down and you can't tell what it is. So in order to make it stand up like a flag is supposed to, like there's a big strong wind blowing it, they put that little wire frame around it. Now, the lunar regolith, the soil, is real thin layer of fine dust, and then there's like rocky, gravelly like material goes down deeper. It's pretty hard packed stuff. And they were having a difficult time getting that flagpole to go down and stay down. If you ever tried to put a stake in the ground with a really hard soil, you want to pound on it with something, but they didn't really have anything to pound it with. So they're standing there and they're holding this thing and they're twisting it back and forth and pushing down on it the whole time. And as they would do this back and forth, it would cause the pole to vibrate, cause the wire to vibrate. And so the flag is sitting there fluttering about. But as soon as they stopped, let go of it, it stopped fluttering. And so they're still not going to stand up straight. So they get back and they do this again. They let their hands go and it stopped fluttering. Only time it ever fluttered was when they were messing with it. And you're sending up a vibration through the thing. It's pretty obvious, painfully obvious to me what was going on. And I just find it incredible that people can watch that, listen to what the narrator says, and be convinced by such a lame argument.
The other ones I hear all the time is, where are the stars? There's missing stars in the backgrounds. The other one I hear all the time is the shadows are not parallel. If there's only one light source, why are the shadows at an angle? The other big one I hear all the time is Van Allen belts. How did the astronauts survive going through all that intense radiation? I would say probably those are the most common ones I hear from people all the time. And then the other one, of course, is they would say, well, they had to fake it because they were in the middle of the Cold War. And in order to fulfill the timeline that President Kennedy did, they decided to fake it because they were running out of time. And there's plenty of problems we can go on there. And I also have a lot of those answers in the article that I have on the website, so people can dig into that more if they want to.
Well, let's start checking these off.
Yeah.
Let's start checking these off the list, because I mean, let me start with this. Can you see why and how some people would question it in the first place? I mean, to have Joe Rogan or to have a Candace Owens or to have somebody see something online, can you see from an initial look at some videos like, okay, I can see how that would make somebody question? Can you relate to that at all? Or with your backgrounds, are you kind of like, I don't know, maybe I have this knowledge, so I don't even question it?
Yeah,
I think
criticism is healthy. I think it's good to be able to question things and know why we know what we know. That's one of the things I really respect from even just from the flat Earth community, the flat earthers that I interact with is, it's the question of epistemology. How do we know what we know? So I do respect that because a lot of times, if you ask someone, how do you know the Earth is a globe? They'll say, well, I was just simply taught it. And so they do raise that good objection there in terms of the moon landing. Well, how do you know we actually landed on the moon? Well, because I was told it was. They don't actually look into it themselves. So what I'm saying is, do we accept every conspiracy theory or do we deny every conspiracy theory? It's not really intellectually honest to be able to have both of those ditches. You really have to have a case by case type of thing when you look at these conspiracy theories and like you were hinting at in the beginning of the show, us creatures, we just really I don't know why, but we have a gravitation towards conspiracy theories and that what if question. And to be fair, a lot of the times, most people today, they'll talk about the moon landing conspiracy, but they won't really take it very seriously. It'd just be like a fun conversation around the campfire with some dudes, just, hey, do you think really? And, it's kind of one of those things. But there are some people who do take it very seriously. And for me, my main concern is that it's not just unbelievers, but there's Christians that are now falling into this hoax story. And as Christians, we're supposed to be following our Lord Jesus Christ, and who says, I am the way, the truth, and life. And so we should be modeling and valuing and speaking the truth and not playing around with these conspiracies and lies that are out there. So that's really my main concern is when I meet people who claim to be born again Christians and they're buying into a lot of these conspiracy theories that are out there. We'll probably get to it later on in the show, but there is one, I would say, slam dunk kind of biblical argument for the whole thing, but we can say that for later.
That sounds interesting. Dr. Faulkner, what are your
That'll
thoughts
be a
on this?
cliffhanger for later.
Yes,
Well,
I'm ready to hear it. That's for sure.
I
Dr.
think
Faulkner,
the
what do you think?
attraction. I think the attraction that Rob was talking about is the secret knowledge, knowing something that's not generally understood or known, and that's a very rampant thing in society today, and even among Christians. There's so many people chasing after arcane knowledge. People are convinced there must be something greater going on out there, and some great nefarious forces out there hiding the truth from us. And I think that's a very powerful attraction for many people. So psychologically, I think that's why people find these things interesting
Yeah.
and to the point of wanting to believe them so badly.
It reminds
Well, and
me
I
of
guess
you remember during your early days, like on the playground where you have a bunch of kids and, the one kid says, I know something you don't know. And they're very happy and they're proud about it that they know something that you don't know. It's really that higher knowledge. And a lot of people, they have a lot of self-worth and self-value around the fact that they know something that a lot of people don't know. And again, like Danny was saying, it really goes back to that Gnosticism, that secret knowledge, which is a heresy for those that don't know what Gnosticism is. It was a heresy during the first century church that the church had to really deal with. It was one of the more dangerous heresies that the church had to deal with at that time. And it's just the same thing repeating over and over again that we're seeing today.
Wow. Okay, well, let's start checking off these things one at a time. Steve on Facebook is asking, why are the pictures of the Earth taken on the moon, too low in the sky, and they're apparently too small, is what he's saying. Let's start checking these things off.
What's too low and too small?
This is why are the pictures of the Earth taken on the moon too low in the sky? Like it looks like that's what he's saying. It seems like the Earth is really low on the horizon of the moon, so to speak.
Yeah,
and it seems like the Earth would be too small because if the Earth is, what is it, 4 times the size of the moon? It's a quarter, is that right? 1/4 and
four times. 4 times.
So how could the Earth looks the same size as the moon, so to speak, as the moon looks to us from Earth? I guess that's
one of
the question.
One of the arguments I've seen have shown Apollo astronauts on the surface of the moon, and indeed low in the sky behind them is the moon, as the Earth sitting there, and they point out that they show where the landing sites were, and they said that the Earth was really high up in the sky. Well, if you look up the original photograph that's based on, the Earth isn't there. Somebody photoshopped that in and faked it. So it's really interesting. To support the idea that NASA faked us going to the moon, people had to fake a picture to convince people. Do you understand the weird logic there? You can't argue that something's fake by using fake data. And that's what I've seen. It's amazing how many people get snookered in by that if they just checked a little bit and find the original photograph to find the Earth isn't there at all in the sky. As far as
Only
Interesting.
If only these moon landing conspiracy guys would apply the same level of skepticism that they apply to NASA towards their own selves and all the videos that they're watching on YouTube, they would be able, like Danny was saying, you'll see that a lot of these memes, people put them together, they Photoshop them, they made these fake photos in order to try to convince people that NASA is producing, fake photos. It really doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, that brings up the question why somebody would fake the photo. And I suspect that many of the people who started this and keep pushing it are in on the gag. They are doing this as a joke to see how many people they can punk. When I was watching that Fox network program over 20 years ago, throughout the thing, I kept thinking, this is so bad. I think the producers of this were putting together something just to play with people. And it's just really kind of funny, but sad at the same time that millions of people were convinced by it. And I think there is something nefarious going on, but it's the pranksters who are making you think it was faked who are really the nefarious agents involved. They're making fun of people who are gullible enough to believe their arguments.
I've always wondered if it really gained popularity, of course, with the advent of social media and YouTube and things like that. But once things got monetized, once you could get paid for, people watching your video, now all of a sudden it's like, boy, why not create videos that bring things into question so that you can get a lot of views, so that you can make a lot of money? And I've even seen atheist friends of mine that will post stuff, even on Twitter now, on X, because they're monetized and they have no desire to know the truth. All they are doing is creating information and creating posts that will create conversations, because the more conversations, the more people to see it, the more money they make. And it really comes down to a money thing for them, not a search for the truth. And that's been frustrating for me to watch that happen with my friends who are atheists out there in the world of social media.
Get clicks, whatever you can do to get views, like you were saying, that's a very common thing. And one thing I want to really make sure that people are aware of is, in my experience, a lot of these people that I deal with on a monthly basis who are dabbling in the moon conspiracy theory, a lot of them, they're kind of on the fence, and I'm okay talking with those people who are on the fence, who are actually looking for answers, actually looking for explanations. But there's those times where people who are, they've already committed in their mind beforehand that no, we did not land on the moon. So really, it doesn't matter what evidence you bring for them, what kind of, you can show them the photographs and all these other pieces of data. It's really not going to convince their mind at the end of the day. They're going to come up with some kind of a rescuing device. And so really, I always want to make sure that people are aware that this is a worldview issue. It's not about the evidence. It's a lot of these people who deny the moon landings, they've already committed in their mind beforehand, and it doesn't matter what piece of evidence you bring to them. And usually I'll be able to figure that out pretty quickly. I'll be talking with someone and I'll just ask them, just plain and simple, I'll say, what type of evidence could I provide you that would change your mind? And if they're honest, they would say none. And that really comes down to it.
Wow. Okay, let's hit a couple more of these. Okay, I've seen the ones that, and I've watched several videos on this over the years. Watched 3 just in the last couple of days, just going, okay, what are the different arguments? What about the shadows are at an inconsistent angle with one source of light being the sun? It looks like there were at least a couple sources of light, because you got a shadow angle that looks like this and a shadow angle that looks like this. And when you draw the lines on those, they actually come and intersect instead of being exactly parallel. Any thoughts on that, guys?
I remember that particularly. The other one I really remember from that documentary over 20 years ago was that one. And I had to laugh and yell at the TV at the time, because they obviously were drawing the lines wrong. I mean, I know about light, I know about shadows, and they were drawing the lines wrong. And it's painfully obvious to me that they were. So again, this is a sham argument. That's, these 2 arguments I've just talked about, that and the flag waving, those were 2 that stood out of me as being so obviously bogus. I was amazed anybody would fall for it. And it made me think that the people putting together that video, that documentary, were just pranking people and seeing how many people they could snooker with their argument. So our lines were just drawn wrong.
That Danny was saying earlier, as far as the flag moving, one thing I always ask people is, okay, let's say this scenario is true. Let's say that they really did make this in a Hollywood stage or whatever. Does that mean someone had a giant fan that was blowing the flag? Like, was there someone off the side of the stage with this big old fan? That's possibly, I mean, and usually you bring that up and then they'll just change the subject. But going back to the shadows, like Danny was saying, this is really a very silly argument, because you can go outside right now and you can do that experiment for yourself. Just just wait until the sun is low and you wait until those shadows, and you can take a picture and you can see that for yourself, that you'll see that all of the lines from your photo is going to look kind of like in that angle direction. And the reason why is because you're trying to take a three-dimensional, trying to impose it onto a two-dimension. It's something that we call geometric perspective. It's something that artists have been using for a long time. I always tell people, have you seen any of the paintings, that people used to do over the last few hundred years, where a lot of painters and artists will actually take advantage of that. You'll see some of the paintings of like the railroad tracks and the buildings. They kind of angle towards a single point, and it's kind of like that same type of idea there. So
yeah, I was actually looking at it. If you take it, especially at a slightly wider angle versus a telescopic angle, and their cameras were definitely a wider angle, they're getting a big field of view with their cameras because they didn't have a viewfinder. They just had to kind of point in the right direction and take pictures. And if you do a slightly wide angle, you're literally creating a spot where if you're in the middle, your shadows are going to come and converge on a point, depending on where you're standing with a wide angle lens. So I love it. Hey, if you think that this, and I'll put it in the post, this image and that this is accurate, go outside and have two poles, stand there, take some pictures in the center of the two shadows and watch those shadows feel like in your image, those are coming together. So if you disagree, send an email to me with your photographic evidence from here on earth, erichovind@creationtoday.org. We'd love to hear from you on that.
People all the time. I tell people, get off the couch, get off the internet, go outside and start doing these experiments. Just go out there and get some sun, It'll be good for you.
Or get some moonlight. Get some moonlight.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
Okay, no blast crater. That's another big one. It's like, well, wait a minute. When this rover came down, I mean, it was descending and it had to slow itself down. So just the blast from whatever the propulsion device was would have absolutely decimated and blasted a huge hole in the moon and left its own crater. Any thoughts on that, guys?
Well, it blew dust away and light soil on the top, but the engine was not on very long when it touched down. And it would take time for that rocket exhaust to actually start blasting away the rocks that's underneath there. So I don't know why in the world people would expect a large crater to be the result.
What Danny said, if you understand orbital mechanics and how we do a lot of these things, what happens is we do a lot of impulse thrusts. And so you'll do an impulse thrust and you'll ride the momentum down. And so a lot of people have this weird kind of idea in their mind that, this engine has to be on the entire time as they're making the descent. But usually that's not going to be as efficient in terms of your fuel consumption. So what happens a lot of the times is you're doing what's called a burn, just a burn impulse, and then you're cutting off the engine at that point. And so that's what happens a lot of times when we're doing a lot of our trajectories, when we're adjusting orbits and those kind of things. And so, and like Danny was saying, it did also blow up a lot of dust. And so, but a lot of people tend to kind of forget that part, I think.
I think we look at it like SpaceX. When we see Elon Musk's rockets coming back down and they're doing this powerful burn, it's trying to go from lots of momentum to no momentum right at that moment. And that's because we got an atmosphere and we're inside of a whole lot more gravity with the Earth, if I understand this correctly.
Yep.
On the
Yep.
moon,
6
with
times
only
more
one
gravity.
6 times
How
more.
many?
Yep.
6 times more gravity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're dealing with a whole lot more force that we're having to go against.
Yep.
And it seems to me on the moon, you wouldn't have that much crashing down force, 1/6 of what we currently have. So
Right.
you could literally do those impulses or propulsions and slow it down. In every video I've watched, it's like, hey, we're coming down at 3 feet per second. Okay, slowing down to 2 feet per second, slowing down to 1 foot per second, and they're easily coming down. So it's just a small impulse to stop it and actually get it to land right there. And for me, when I look at these videos, I actually do see the dust being blown away. Now, why don't we have a dust cloud though? Because people say, hey, where's your plume? Like, especially when it takes off, where's the plume of this dust?
With no atmosphere, the dust doesn't continue to float in the air. It drops back down very quickly, and it keeps going. By the way, if it's moving laterally, what keeps dust particles in the air for so long is the fact that you've got what amounts to Brownian motion with the air molecules bouncing around. With no air, you're not going to see that. It's going to take off, and it's going to keep going.
So we would
Yes.
expect to see the dust just literally go out and drop. Okay, so like if you guys have ever seen the experiment where they take a vacuum chamber and they drop a bowling ball and a feather, and with the air, the bowling ball drops and the feather floats down, suck all the air out, and then shaboom, they both fall at the same speed. Dust up there on the moon, no atmosphere. It doesn't matter. It's not going to create a plume. It's going to fall immediately.
Yeah. It's going to go off on its trajectory and fall back down, but it's not going to hang around where you've generated kick the dust out. It's going to keep going.
Okay. All right. What about one more before I gotta let social media go. We didn't even get to Rob's good one. Social media. I'm so
Before we let
sorry.
social media go, should we bring in the clincher argument here, Danny?
Go ahead.
All
You
right.
want to bring in the clincher? Okay, bring in the
So,
clincher.
all
Hey,
right,
by the way, if you guys want the rest of this conversation, you got to come over to creationtoday.org and just partner with us and enjoy all. This is 400 shows now. Enjoy all these conversations with some amazing guests. And before you go, after Rocket Rob gives you the clincher here, hey guys, Answers in Genesis has an amazing organization. I would love you to go to check out answersingenesis.com and just type in, like Rob said, moon landing. Read his article there. Dr. Faulkner has several books that he's written that would be great on astronomy. So get it from people who have done the work, been there, done that, and have the evidence for you. I'm curious though, what Master Rocket Rob Webb is going to say about the clincher. What is going to be our clincher here?
So here's the final argument to put this whole thing to bed. I'm going to share my screen and I'm just going to show you a photo. All right. See if this works.
That's an astronaut.
Yep, there's an astronaut. His name is Charlie Duke. He was the lunar module pilot on Apollo 16. He also was the Capcom from Apollo 11. So this is a picture of me and Danny Faulkner. He came to the Creation Museum with him and his family. And most importantly, though, he is a born-again Christian. He loves Jesus, loves our ministry, loves Answers in Genesis. And so really, for a Christian, those that buy into this whole moon landing conspiracy stuff, are you ready to call a Christian brother a liar? Are you ready to make that accusation? And so I'll just leave it at that.
Wow. Now, it is true. I mean, if these were fake, if this did not happen, is it possible, Rob, you worked at NASA, is it possible to have literally thousands of people keep a conspiracy like this quiet? Is that even a possibility?
No, I worked in the aerospace industry for many years. I worked on many government programs, and I always tell people, if you've ever been to a DMV before, that's essentially how NASA and government agencies, that's how they run their programs. They're very inefficient. And I mean, if you just look at it from a big picture, I mean, just imagine the number of people, hundreds, if not thousands of people that had to be around. And human beings, we're not very good at keeping secrets, and it gets exponentially worse the more and more people you have involved. And so it really, it's just really a silly claim. So I have one more picture. I don't know if you guys can see this one as well. So this is a family. This is my family, my three kids.
Awesome.
Can you guys see that?
Yes.
So
Special.
There's my 3-year-old. He's got his little astronaut outfit on, and it was great. As soon as he met Charlie, he walked right up to him and said, "I'm going to Mars." And Charlie was like, "Okay, this bum, go for it, man." So they were excited to meet them.
That's Charlie's wife, Dottie, on the right there.
And that's Dottie there. And so this is us at the Creation Museum. And going back to the, as Christians, whenever we want to settle a matter, it's very important we go over to God's Word. What does God's Word say? How do we settle these things? And God's Word says you have to have 2 or 3 credible witnesses. We have Charlie Duke. We also have Jim Irwin, who's no longer with us. Those are 2 born-again Christians right there who have walked on the moon. So we have 2 credible witnesses who have walked on the moon. And so right there, we have eyewitness testimony. These guys have written books on it. They've spoken about it. Again, born-again Christians. And so those who deny the moon landing, you have to be ready to call your 2 Christian brothers liars. And that's called slander. Slandering is a very serious thing in the Bible. The Bible repeatedly condemns against lying against brothers and slandering others.
Wow. Good information, guys. Okay, I still want to know about like some of the anomalies in the photographs and the videos. Like, what about? Where did that footage go? Why did they, quote, erase it? What about technology and why we haven't gone back? Is it possible to just do all this in slow motion and recreate what they did? But okay, we'll talk about that with just our partners. If you want to join the rest of the conversation, please come over to creationtoday.org. Partner with us and get every single conversation we've ever done, plus everything we do in the future. We don't even put a price on it. You get to name your own price. You pay whatever you want and just help us reach the world with the gospel. That's the whole point of it. We got a lot more people to reach with the truth of the gospel. And I think this is important. And here's why this matters before I let you go, even though I was supposed to let you go 6 minutes ago. This matters because truth matters. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I don't know about you, but I want the truth. And I don't want you, and I don't want me, and I don't want my friends and my family to be hurt by lies. We want the truth. Jesus says the truth is what's going to ultimately set you free, and I want you to be free. So keep studying these truths. I encourage you to check this out. Check out the articles on the websites. But even going deeper than that, I mean, there are people that claim Jesus never existed. You need to look in that one because he did. Jesus didn't die on the cross. He didn't raise from the dead. I'm telling you. These things have so much information, so much evidence, including God's word as the foundation, that if this is true, it has big implications. And that's why this is so important. All right, I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Should be a fantastic conversation next week as I'm actually talking about world religions, and we're going to go into the Catholicism and say, all right, who's right? Are the Catholics right? So some of you are Catholic and you got friends that are Catholic. I got to tell you, the whole Pope endorsing evolution was a big problem for me. We'll talk about that next week. See you guys then.